Fight!
Hi everyone, let's review the rules of the Kendo Playing Cards game. There are two versions of the game rules, named after the shinai or bamboo swords used in the two-sword fencing style of Kendo, which is called Nitto-ryu in Japanese. Here the shorter sword is called the Shoto, and the longer sword is a Daito, has the names of the two rule variants. We will now look at the Shoto, a faster and simplified version. Let's start by placing the game board on the table, and then each player gets their tokens. There are only 2 players to play the game, and each player will receive 2 focus tokens marked with a brown color and 2 referee tokens marked with a red and white referee flag, and 2 favorite technique or tokuiwaza tokens. This is the token with a red and white border and a +1 mark on it. In addition, tokens called hansoku, meaning warning or penalty, and ippon, meaning point or hit, will be placed next to the game board. This will be used when a player receives either a warning, hansoku, or a point called ippon. The next important step is to take the playing cards, so take the deck and pick out the 3 cards with the brown edge called jikandes, or in English, times up. These are out of the game and are not needed in the Shoto version at all. Then let's shuffle the deck carefully, and once this is done, we deal a total of 8 cards to each player, and the rest of the deck is put down next to the game board. Then all we have to do is decide on the starting player, which we can do by playing a game of rock, paper and scissors. Oops, the player on the left starts. Before we start the game, let's see who will be the winner of the game. The winner is the player who gets 2 ippons or hits first during the game, or when one player runs out of cards, has more ippon than his opponent. When a player scores an ippon or a point, take the ippon token and place it here. So when the red player scores a hit or ippon, we place a hit marker and ippon token here on the game board. If we get a warning, which is called in Japanese hansoku, we also place a warning or hansoku token here. An ippon is positive and a hansoku is negative. If someone gets 2 warnings, the opponent automatically gets 1 point. Now the red player has 2 warnings, so the white player gets an ippon. Of course, in this case, the 2 warning markers, or hansoku tokens, are taken off the board. But how do you get an ippon, or point? As you know, 2 of which are needed to win. One way is that you can't answer an attack coming towards you with a brown card. In this case, our opponent scores an ippon. The other option is not to respond to a yellow card. In this case, as you can see here, we get a hansoku or warning. If 2 of these are accumulated, 2 hansoku will result in 1 ippon for our opponent. Now let's review the gameplay. The game is played in turns, which means that players take turns attacking each other. When it's one player's turn, he looks at his cards and can swap any of them as he wishes, but only 1 piece of cards for a new one from the draw pile. So I pick a card, put it in a discard pile, face up, and then draw a card from the draw pile and look at it, of course. A turn in which you play cards either ends with the incoming attack being parried, so here the opponent attacks us with a tsuki or thrust, and we somehow turn the attack back on the opponent. Or if we fail and his attack succeeds, the opponent scores an ippon. If he attacks with a card that results in a hansoku, we get a warning. So either you parry the attack or you will be awarded a hit or a warning at the end of the turn. The round ends when a player receives a warning, hansoku, or an ippon. And what else happens when the round ends, when we award an ippon or a hansoku? The first step is to remove the used cards from the game board and place them in the discard pile. The second important thing is that you keep your cards. You don't lose them. If a player has fewer cards than the starting 8, so 4 cards like here, then he has to draw the cards back to 8 from the draw pile. So we will draw them back unless we are restricted by the Crazy Key Ice cards penalty. In addition, if we have less than 2 tokens of focus or referee tokens, we get 1 focus and 1 referee token back at the end of the round. Favorite technique tokens used during the game cannot be returned, and you cannot have more than 2 from the referee or focus tokens each. The next round is then started by the player who is in the worst position. So if someone has been awarded a hansoku or a warning, he starts the next round. If you have scored an ippon, so you have been awarded a point, then your opponent starts the next attack. Now, let's take a look at how the tokens and the playing cards work. They are interrelated, so I will show them together. First, let's look at the focus token. The focus token, with its brown edge, tells us that it can be used against the brown technique cards. So, if we are being attacked with a brown card, and we can't or don't want to respond with a card, we can put a brown focus token on it as a kind of joker. It is then out of play, and we are allowed to respond with any attack card we want. In general, if you are not using the brown focus token, you use the brown cards that have a swords and a fan icon on each of them. The swords represent attack and the fan represents defense, or more correctly counterattack. So this card represents an attack on the body, which is do in Japanese, and also a counterattack on the body, which is again do. Another card, if you look at it, whose name is man, that means head in Japanese, denotes an attack to the head and a counterattack to the body. The brown cards can be used as sort of dominoes, so if you are attacked with this card, which denotes an attack to the body, you can counter it with a card that has the same strike as the attacking card under the fan icon. So, if you are attacked with a do, you must defend with a do countering card. The use of the referee's token is extremely simple. If you use one of these tokens, you can draw 2 cards from the draw pile if you have less than 8 cards in total. So you can never exceed the maximum hand size. You can use the referee's token after you have made your card exchange. You can no longer exchange cards drawn with the referee's token during your turn. At the most, in your next round, you can get 2 of the favorite technique tokens at the start of the game, and you can get new ones when you use them up. I like the focus on referee token shown earlier, from which you can get 1 back for every ippon and hansoku, if you have less than 2. The favorite technique token is good for adding an extra attack card to your normal attack if you take advantage of this token. You can usually attack with 1 or 2 cards, but you can also use it to reinforce your attack with a 3rd card. Now let's look at the uses and functions of each card. Almost half of the deck is made up of brown cards, which are the basic attacks of Kendo. These are strikes to the head, the body, the forearm, and thrust to the throat. This card shows that this figure, for example, is receiving an attack to the head. This is called men in Japanese. And here you can see an attack on the body, here on the forearm, and there a thrust. These 4 basic attacks are shown on the tiles in different variations. As we said before, the fan icon always indicates what the counter attack is, and the swords icon shows the attack. These attacks can be complemented by other cards. Before we move on, I would like to point out that the game pack comes with this help sheet, which details what each card does and what cards can be played against it. So, as we looked at before, you can see here the brown cards, which can be used domino style. You can play the focus token against them. You can neutralize them with a green card, which also has a brown marker on it, and the purple card called Fudo Shin, which also has a brown circular marker on it, so it can be used against brown cards. Here, on the right, pictograms are used to indicate the consequences of not being able to react to a card. So for a brown card, ippon or hit, and we will look at the rest of the cards shortly. Here you can see how the attacking cards can be used in pairs. You can put them in as a single card, or you can put additional red, yellow, or blue attack cards in different pairings alongside the brown cards. You can see that you need 2 ippon to win. If you use the favorite technique token, you can bring an extra attack card into play, and so on. In addition to the brown card, there are 3 other types of attack cards in the game. The attack function on the red card is also represented by the swords icon. The fan icon indicates that it is also a counter-attack card, and the arrow also indicates that it reverses the attack. There are 2 types of the red card, one marked with -1 and the other one is marked with -2. If you fail to respond to a red card, you lose 1 or 2 tokens depending on what is on the attacking card. We can choose which token to give. Against the red card, we can play either the red card itself, so another one, or the card called Fudoshin, or Unmovable Mind in Japanese. We have also visually indicated on this card that it can be used against Seme, or the red card. The second card is yellow and indicates a technique of twisting the sword from the opponent's hand. If you cannot answer this card, so neutralize the attack, you will receive a warning, in Japanese Hansoku. If 2 of these are accumulated, it results in an ippon for the opponent. So essentially, if we drop our sword twice, our opponent gets 1 point. You can also see here that you can play another yellow card against this card, or you can play a card called Unmovable Mind shown earlier, which is marked as being used against the yellow card. Our last attacking card is blue and is called Crazy Ki, or Crazy Battle Cry in English. It works similarly to the previous 2 cards. The consequence of not being able to respond to it is that we must discard a card of our choice from our hand. When this happens, we must place the Crazy Ki card face up in front of us to remind us that the maximum number of cards we can hold in our hand has been reduced by 1. This remains throughout the game and means that if a player scores an ippon or gets a hansaku, in other words a round ends, and we want to draw up new cards instead of the cards we have spent in the game, the presence of such a card will always limit the maximum number by 1. So if we have 8 cards and we can only draw back to 7 if we suffer the Crazy Ki card. If we have another one, so a 2 of a total, then we can only draw back to 6, and so on. It is also possible that if we have suffered a lot of such cards, we can only draw back to 3 or 4. Against it, we can also use the same card, so another Crazy Ki card, or the card just shown called Fudoshin, or Unmovable Mind. There are 2 more cards left. These are no longer attack cards, as you can see that they do not have the swords icon on them. The green card, which marks a very close distance where the grip protectors meet, and a card called Kamae, or basic position, or basic posture. It can be seen that the green card can be used against the brown cards, or the men, kote, do, or tsuki attacks, indicated by the brown circle at the bottom of the card. If you place a green card on a brown card, it will neutralize it completely regardless of what is on the brown card. And again, it's our turn to attack, indicated by the return arrow. The other card, called kamae in Japanese, shows whether it can be used against a yellow card or a blue card that is attacking. It's important it does not have an arrow on it, so it is for simple neutralization, in which case we do not counterattack, we just block or parry the attack coming towards us. The last one, a card I have shown you many times, is Fudoshin, or Unmovable Mind in Japanese. It is a defensive card and can be used against practically all attacking cards. There are only 2 of them in a game, so even though they are powerful, there are not many of them. And if we use it, we are next again with a new attack. Finally, I would like to say a couple of important things. For example, when a round is over, or a Hansaku or an Ippon is awarded, the cards that have been used are removed from the board and put into the discard pile. This can also be done during the game if the game board is too crowded. If a situation arises where a player needs to draw a card from the draw pile but there are no more cards there, take the cards in the discard pile, turn them face down, shuffle them, and return them to the draw pile. One more important note. In case the active player attacks us, so if the white player attacks the red player and the red player neutralizes this attack, say with a Fudoshin card, but has no other attacking cards, this does not entail a penalty for the red player, but the right to attack reverts to the previous player. This can also happen if you simply have no cards left, or you just don't want to attack back. In this case, like a ping pong ball, the right to attack reverts to the previous player. Naturally, if we cannot put a card or token to respond to the incoming attack, then the consequences must be enforced. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and I hope the explanation of the rules was clear. In the next video I will demonstrate an example of gameplay with less explanation of each feature. Bye.